So
Hey guys, we're all set.
All right. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today?
Good morning.
Outstanding, outstanding. My name is Clifford Mitchum, and the company I'm with is called Clean Renewable Energy Worldwide. What we do is we take care of solar power for homes. A lot of people have heard about the Babcock Ranch community. They're having a big solar field put in. All the houses run off solar power. We're the people they talk to if you can't do that. All right? So we actually get solar panels installed on the rooftops of the home so people can create their own power. Now, the reason I'm here today is to provide some education and some information for all of you all. There's a lot of people in the real estate market and the real estate industry that have heard about solar, they've seen it a couple times, and the biggest thing that most people know is it's really expensive. And that's not the case anymore. Solar itself has come down about 50% of what it was 5 years ago, which puts it on par with the utility power. So it's essentially same numbers across the board, and that's without incentives because the state of Florida does not have a renewable energy policy, not even a bad one. In fact, it's not one at all. So we have that going on. So just to get everything started, Crew itself, we are a member-owned co-op, which means each of our representatives are independent representatives, just like agents and brokers in that fashion. We are in 48 states plus DC. So we can, anybody pretty much anywhere, we can actually get solar working for. So it doesn't necessarily it's not limited to Florida, although my focus is the Southwest region, going everywhere all the way from Naples up to Venice. That's just my focus, but I do power all throughout that. So now, how solar works. Solar panels themselves, as you can see in the picture here, installed on the roof, and they connect to what's called an inverter. Now, the solar panels themselves create direct power, basically like small motors. It's direct energy. But the appliances in our homes use alternating power. So it has to go through what's called an inverter. The inverter takes that DC, makes it into AC, and then goes to the home, and it goes to the meter, so that way the electrical meter spins backwards. So they get credit for all the power that their system's producing. All right, so now this particular system type is called a grid intertie. Grid intertie means that it's still connected to the utility. It is illegal in the state of Florida to not be connected to the utility, so 99.9% of your systems are going to be grid intertie unless they have some sort of special case that the government allows them to do that. Otherwise, the person has to be connected to the utility. But that does not mean that somebody can't be essentially off-grid, which means that they're not actually using any utility power. So they're overproducing or producing sufficient power that they're not using the electricity from the utility grid. Now, with an interconnected system, the solar panels themselves are going to power the home during the day, and then the utility company is going to power the home at night. Now, based off of the number of credits that their system has overproduced, is essentially what makes that total number zero. Because during the day, a lot of the power demand is higher because the air conditioning running and things along those lines, but a lot of people aren't home. So they have a lot of extra power that's produced for the system, or the system, like particularly for my house, my system is over-designed, because I'm going to be adding in some charging stations and some other amenities, but I have a lot of extra power that's going towards the utility company, so it's running my meter, it will be running my meter backwards. So they get the credit for that. Now, generally the first thing that people come to mind is, great, in a hurricane I still have power. Not quite. That is a possibility, but in the standard system design, that's not the case because of a safety feature called islanding. Now, in the event that these power lines were to go down because of a hurricane storm or some sort of catastrophe, the power would be shut off from the utility company, but it would end up still being live coming from the home. So as a safety mechanism, the system has to shut down so that way a technician can actually work on the line to get everything connected again. Now, somebody can go through and have that ability by adding batteries to their system. And that way their home is covered for, most battery systems go about 2 to 3 days, just depending on the size and what a person's particular requirements are for that. So that's when somebody can fully say, hey, everybody else has power, I don't, come get me, $5 a head. All right. Yeah. So that's how they get that. Now, a lot of people have also heard of getting paid for their power. All right? That's referred to as net metering. Now, when the meter is running backwards because the house is overproducing, the utility company doesn't have to pay for that power. It can take that power and redistribute it to another home, another building, saving their batteries, and do whatever they'd like with it. And because they didn't have to produce that power, but they can use it, they compensate the homeowner or the building owner, whoever owns the system. And now it's not at market price. Market price for electricity right now is about 10.4 to about 11.7 cents. And they get cut about half of that into whatever they have as their avoided costs. So they compensate homeowners around 4.7 cents, 5.2 cents, somewhere in that range, depending on their area. All right, so that's where they get something back. It's not exactly go out and get another lease Mercedes or anything, but it ends up being a couple hundred at the end of a year. That's what's referred to as a true up. So at the end of the year, they total up how many extra credits a home system has produced, and they cut a check for that. So that's where somebody's actually able to get some more power from that. But the big advantage is in the avoided costs and the cost savings by having a system more than getting paid by the utility company, because chances are they will end that soon enough. Particularly once there's only about less than 1% of the homes in the state of Florida actually have solar power. So it's not something that the industry really looks at as a particular threat, but they know that as you can read on your agenda, solar power in Florida has the third highest potential in the entire United States. So the potential is massive as far as what it can do. And the fact that people are really becoming more environmentally conscious and want to be more environmentally responsible and focused further shows its potential where it can move forward too. So that brings us into the impact of the solar system. Solar saves money. Hands down. There is not particularly an instance I'm aware of that a person's not able to save money on their system, particularly with the way the market is today. Several years ago, when system costs were much higher, that wasn't always the case. People would be lucky to break even. Now it's to the point where it's pretty much a no-brainer for many people, which is why you're more than likely going to be seeing it be coming up more through your neighborhoods, more as people move in and out of the neighborhood, and as people move in, how they want to go ahead and take advantage of it. So it's environmentally friendly and saves the planet. When people think about utility power, first thing that comes to mind is big smokestacks. Whether they're letting off coal ash, or whether letting off steam, or whether letting off the natural gas exhaust. You have the big smokestacks that are just pumping out pollution into an environment. That pollution is going to end up settling on top of our foliage, settling on top of our vehicles, causing paint defects. Everybody likes that nice fade that goes on the top of the hood. It's not just the sun, it's the oxidation from the chemicals that are floating around in the air. So we have all that as wonderful byproducts of our power generating systems. Using solar avoids that. And for each home that uses that, we save about 1 million cubic feet of natural gas. For Lee County, 70% of our power is actually created by natural gas. And for the state of Florida, only about 30% is from coal, and that's generally in the northern portions of the state. So now 1 million cubic feet is about the size of 4 Olympic-sized swimming pools of natural gas each month that each house produces, assuming that it's about 1,000 kilowatt hours for each month. So all that natural gas has to be mined, has to be transported, has to be piped, and then it has to be burned to create steam that spins the turbines that creates the electricity at the central point. So now, each system lasts for about 25 to 30 years. So you have great longevity into a single system itself, particularly for a homeowner. So it's something that's going to be pretty much set it and forget it for the next 25 to 30 years. The systems that my company use, we actually focus on the 30-year range, but the industry standard is 25 to 30 years. And just like most anything, that's not a maximum life, that's just the design life. Somebody may still get 35. Getting into 40 is pretty Olympic level production, but that generally. All right, so there's no pollution. As I just touched on, once solar panels are made, created, they just work. There are particular instances where something has happened, but it was generally an installation error, and that happens in the first year, and that's covered by the manufacturer and the installers for the systems. So now the avoided fossil fuel costs in particular are the biggest things that solar provides and renewable energy provides. Is that we don't have that day in, day out of burning byproduct, air contamination, water contamination, soil contamination from that. Having solar power actually helps out with everyone because it lightens the load on the utility grid. If 10% of the homes are not using the electricity from the grid during the day, that's 10% less that has to be shipped to that location. That's 10% less of the peaker plants, because power spikes during the day and then cools down. So they have to turn on extra burners to make sure they can cover the capacity while the sun's up. So this way they don't have to turn on those burners, so they get an inherent savings from that standpoint as well. So it's really a savings all across the board. All right, so now let's get into more of the nitty-gritty. In particular, why solar is so important for real estate professionals to know about. The number one thing is that solar increases the value of the home. So just like when someone adds a pool or adds an addition, adds another building onto their property, it adds value to the home. Solar is the same way. Although solar, some people like to have explained to me that pools aren't necessarily the biggest advantage to home value, where you may spend $60,000 on it, but it only adds about $40,000 to the value of the home, something in those range. You all probably know better than that. But solar at this point is a one-to-one. So if somebody goes and installs $30,000 worth of solar, the street value of that home just went up by $30,000. All right, the studies that actually go through and prove that was from Berkeley National Labs. Berkeley National Labs are the people that go through and find out all the information as far as how well the science is working behind particular products and ideas. They've actually won 15 Nobel Prizes for their work, and they're very diligent in what they did. The study that they did was in 2015. It's called Selling into the Sun, and that studied 8 different states over 15 years what the impact of getting solar power on homes was. And what they determined is that it increases the value of about $3.78 per watt of solar. So that right there is actually higher than the average installation cost of solar power. So that's how it's achieved a one-to-one. The national average for installing solar comes to about $3.30 a watt. So that's basically saying if somebody needed 5 kilowatts of power, it would cost about 3.3 times that, which would be about almost $20,000, just as far as numbers to equate to on that. So the pricing comes out phenomenal for everybody involved. Plus, it connects with the resale. When someone goes and sells a house that has $30,000 worth of solar on it, depending on the length of the use, they just take off 1 year's worth of value from that. So they get that virtually that entire investment cost recouped at the sale of a home. Now, getting systems. There's 4 general ways that somebody can go ahead and go through with the financing of a system. First one being they could just pay for it outright, cash. They could burn the hole in their pocket. They want to add something to the house, outstanding. And then they can go ahead and avoid any interest or any fees that we know that go along with financing anything. Next to that is financing a system. System financing goes in generally 12, 15, and 20-year ranges. People can do things that are more complicated, but those are the 3 standard lengths that people use. And now we also have a government program called Property Assessed Clean Energy. What this does is actually uses the property value of the home and writes a loan against that, so it avoids using a credit rating agency, and it's actually endorsed by particular counties. Lee County is not currently a part of the PACE program, but Hillsborough County, north of us, is over in Tampa, and I think St. Lucie County, and then some of the other ones in the north, but it's something that may still be coming into the Lee County area. But it's something to be aware of, but not necessarily that somebody needs to know. Now, there is a new one, which is the home style energy mortgage, which is available now, and it's dependent on whatever lender that someone's using. So It's not something that particularly you as agents need to know the details of, but just know that it's out there, and if somebody's interested, this could be an option for them. I don't imagine many of you have people that are asking about too much solar. Anybody ever had anybody asking for solar? One guy. That's about the average, so I'm going to be changing that soon enough, just so you all know. Get ready. All right, so now, once somebody actually is interested in solar and they want to move forward with it, what does somebody do? Somebody were to come up to any of you and say, hey, you know what, I want solar for my house. Rather than missing out on the opportunity of helping the environment and making sure that they can get what they asked for, you would call a gentleman like myself. I'd go over, check out the property, find the potential, and see what the actual power consumption is for that person. A lot of people like to ask me, well, how much is solar for my house? I have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. There can be a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with 2 teenagers, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with just a retired couple, completely different energy profiles. There's no single cookie cutter answer that I could give anybody that would be with any relation without knowing what their energy profile is. Now, somebody that is telling you what their electricity bill is, I can work a little bit more with that because that's closer to what it's connected to. If somebody has a standard electricity bill of $100 a month, great, so it's going to cost you about $100 a month. It's virtually on par. Depending on what amenities that a person may want to use in the system design, that's the biggest thing that can change that. But for the most part, it's all one-to-one on that. So now, I've mentioned nothing but ups. Everything is great in solar. So, that it is. But what would be the limitations of it? The three biggest things about solar, number one, are shading. Trees are beautiful, trees are wonderful, but not when they're blocking a roof.
Shading is the number one factor when it comes into, just getting sunlight to the panels. After that, number two is space. You have to make sure there's enough roof space to actually provide the area for the necessary panels to cover the power use of that facility. Now, there are situations where people have the ability to put panels on the ground and extend the space that the panels have so they can produce more power. However, not everybody has space so they can put them on the ground. So what somebody has on the roof is another limiting factor, particularly if somebody has a multiple-story building. You're talking about twice the square footage, but the same roof space. So a 2-story building has half the roof space of a 1-story building to produce the same amount of power. Number three is actually a kind of a bittersweet. The technology in solar is advancing so much that people often tend to just wait for that next advancement to actually come to market. And there's a lot of cool technology out there, but not all of it's ready to just go to full scale. Like, a lot of people are very interested in the solar tiles that Tesla has. And this touches into our solar tomorrow, the new technology and the expansion. Well, the solar tiles are great. They're wonderful technology, and it's a tremendous advancement that Elon Musk has put out. But they're a little expensive. They're a luxury item. The average person is not able to take advantage of them just because they're so new, which means the cost of them is high. So the technology has to come down before people can really get to them. There's also this cool technology, the sunflower. Now, what this does is it has solar panels that are shaped like petals of a flower, and they actually come together, and the whole system lays down when the sun's down, and then raises up and comes out to make this beautiful flower when the sun's out. The thing about it is it doesn't produce as much power as the conventional solar panels. So when people just look at the panels that typically people see on the roof, they're going to produce better, and it's going to provide more use space for the power that the home or the residence needs. Now, another one that's a really cool technology is the Rossmann solar sphere. It's actually a solar concentrator. And this boasts about 35% higher efficiency compared to conventional panels. But like the sunflower, it actually doesn't provide enough to power a full home. Now, the Rossmann solar sphere is really cool because it's a sculpture, or it's more aesthetic, So somebody could have one in front of their building or in front of their home and it'll produce electricity, but it's not going to produce it to the level that's going to, completely offset the demand for that particular building or that space. So that kind of goes into the limitations. But what it shows is that the conventional panels, the glass panels that are generally about 3 foot by 5 foot, somewhere in that range, that we've all seen and we've become used to, that have had tremendous advancements as far as material use, so that way they can provide more energy using less material, they're the best way to go. They're cost effective, they're proven, and there's already established infrastructure for them. So with all that, that kind of covers all the time that I've been allotted to speak with you. I appreciate all of you taking the time to hear me out, to understand more about solar, and by all means, reach out to me. If you have a homeowner that is interested in solar, mention solar. Don't let that just go by the wayside. Get in contact. It's no charge to do an assessment, just to see how much power that they need and how much solar that they need to cover their power demand. It's all just a matter of each one reaching out to another. Each one reach one is how we're going to make the solar economy here in Southwest Florida. Hope you all have a wonderful day. I just want you all to go forth and spread some sunshine.